Welcome everyone to another episode of Pop Rant Radio, the podcast where two pop culture junkies discuss popular and sometimes not so popular culture. My name is Moss, I'm one of your hosts, and with me as always is my good friend and co-host, Eric. How are you today, sir?
One of these days I'm just not going to answer you, and it's just going to be a long pause.
Long, awkward silence.
Like, I've never been here. You've hosted this podcast by yourself.
You've Tyler Durdened me.
I did.
Spoiler alert for Fight Club. It's
David Fincher board.
It's actually about two podcasters.
Well, there goes the David Fincher count.
Oh,
it's
man.
alright. I was going to ruin it anyway this week.
Oh, you were? Okay.
I was going to already talk about it.
I actually wasn't. Not on purpose, just by coincidence, I guess.
Yeah.
So this week, we're going to return to form a little bit. We spent the last week berating Suicide Squad.
Which was fun.
And it was, but really, and we kind of touched on this in our very first episode and kind of throughout, but Eric and I both love storytelling and love movies.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it.
Contrary to the last episode where we tore Suicide Squad apart, we really do love stories and movies, and we want movies to be good.
To be fair, we did Rocketeer before that.
We did, yeah. We try to strike a balance.
Yeah, we were like, FDC, gush about Rocketeer, FDC.
Yes.
This week's episode, and the next week's episode, we're going to talk about how The Killing Joke had a completely inappropriate prologue.
I still have to watch it. Yeah, this week we're going to kind of return to form a little bit. We're going to talk about some positive stuff. But again, it's just the idea is that we really do love movies and stories, and we want things to be good. You said this last week, where like the movies, the stories that they're telling, the DC and specifically, but just in general, the audience deserves to have a better story told.
Right.
Like they deserve a better movie to be shown to them.
Yep.
You know, these characters that are beloved, Harley Quinn, and that's about it. I don't think anyone's super in love with the Killer Croc.
You even see all the Katana fans?
Oh man, we didn't even talk about that. How Katana's sword steals people's souls, and they like mention that, and then
we talked about it as much as they did,
right? And then just immediately throw it away in the movie.
Well, then she talks to it and she cries at one point, but we don't care because she has 2 lines before that.
Have you seen the YouTube video with the what's the girl's name? I'm gonna look.
Yeah, where she's talking to herself.
Yes, where she's like in the boardroom. I'm gonna mention it because it's worth plugging.
She's like, "Oh, and Katana's there. Wait, why is Katana there? Well, she's part of the squad. Why?" I also just love the. Why don't you just send 50 soldiers? Well, because the squad should go do it.
Right, and I love.
Oh, okay. Well, there's also 50 soldiers. Wait, why? The squad's there.
This guy has boomerangs.
Yeah.
Ginny Nicholson, that's her name. So if you haven't checked out that video already, please do so.
It's pretty good.
It's great. It's hilarious. So this week we're going to talk about great moments in storytelling. So whether that's a specific scene in a movie or a specific line of dialogue from a book, at any point in storytelling, a moment or a brief period of time or scene where the moment really drives home the idea of what the story is trying to get at. Like really delivers on the theme and on the tone. And we're going to kind of go through some examples that are important to us.
Like the famous line from Thor: The Dark World.
There's no famous line from
Hello
Thor:
there,
The Dark
Thor.
World. Hello there, Thor. Quote, Loki.
Of course.
So, yeah, and I had forgotten to mention this when we were talking about Rocketeer, but one of my favorite things about that movie is at the very end, so just kind of to recap everything real quick, the villain of the movie is Neville Sinclair.
Yep.
He turns out to be a Nazi.
And James Bond.
Yeah, and James Bond. He's an actor in Hollywood, in like classic golden age Hollywood. And there's that line where Cliff Secord, the Rocketeer, when he finally flies up to the Zeppelin, he's going to save his girlfriend Jenny. He jumps down and Cliff like decks Sinclair one time and he goes, "Where's your stuntman now, Sinclair?" And then Neville Sinclair stands up, punches him back, and he goes, "I do my own stunts." Like I love that line. But the whole idea that it's great, it's fantastic.
Where's the trombone?
But it's so perfect for like the era the movie takes place, and again like the tone and the themes and everything.
It's very over the top.
It's so perfect, man. It's so great. So in that movie, when the rocket pack gets damaged and PV puts the gum over it to prevent the fuel from leaking out or whatever,
right?
When Secord hands over the rocket pack to Sinclair at the end of the movie, he like peels the gum back so the fuel leaks out a little bit. And I like it because the hero of our movie ultimately defeats the villain through cleverness as opposed to just a fist fight.
Oh, you mean like all the DC movies?
Right, like they get into a fist fight, yes, but the fist fight doesn't define the final confrontation.
Right.
It's all about
it's a style of confrontation.
Yeah, it's Secord. When he peels back the gum, he essentially uses his cleverness and his wit to trick Sinclair into using the rocket. Yeah, to Billy Campbell it, of course. the classic Billy Campbell. Right. Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
I'm going to start doing that. I'm going to start using
a Billy Campbell thing.
It's a Billy Campbell right there. Yeah. You pulled a Billy. But yeah, so he uses his cleverness to defeat the villain of the movie. And I really like that. It's this is totally off topic, but like I really love The Martian. Like The Martian was a great movie. Because did you not like it?
No, that was fine.
Okay, I thought it was fantastic because
I was just waiting for it to like pan out for a second, and it turns out to be like an otherworld story version of Interstellar, and I was waiting for Matthew McConaughey to land on Mars.
No. Interstellar.
And then Matt Damon screw him over.
No. Very nice.
It'd be the best crossover.
That would be fun. No, I did not like Interstellar.
Oh, but why? It's Christopher Nolan.
Nolan. He and I have a love-hate relationship. He doesn't know about it, but
you have like a 5-year love-hate relationship followed by about like a 2 to 3 year like
something like that
relationship.
Yeah. But
hey, Dunkirk.
So Dunkirk. We'll see the trailer. I mean,
the trailer doesn't show. Classic Nolan trailer where it shows absolutely zero, but everyone goes ugh.
We'll see. It's Nolan. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Because he's one of the few directors that can actually do what he wants to do in a movie still.
Yeah.
As opposed to like Suicide Squad, because we're going to talk about this in a little bit, where David Ayer, obviously there was studio involvement, and that doesn't necessarily mean that his version of the movie would have been perfect. Still looks, generic and that sort of thing. But the point is that clearly there was involvement, and because most directors nowadays have to adhere to what the studio wants, and there are a few directors out there, Scorsese, Fincher, Christopher Nolan, like Spielberg, directors that can kind of do what they want to do because they have the clout to do so.
Right.
But my point about The Martian was, one of the reasons I really like that movie is because there's no bad guy, like in the conventional sense.
The bad guy's Mars.
The bad guy is Mars.
In its entirety.
But it's like Mars Attacks. It's a sequel to Mars Attacks, really.
Or maybe a prequel. Maybe this is why they attack.
So...
You left Matt Damon here, you assholes!
There isn't really a bad guy. Like, it's a movie about smart people solving problems.
Right.
And again, that's really, really rare. And it's not the exact same thing as The Rocketeer, but again, Cliff Secord uses there are rockets. Uses his intelligence in order to ultimately defeat the bad guy. And I really like that.
Fantastic.
Fantastic Four?
Nope, not on my list.
Not that? Okay. So yeah, so we're going to talk about that was kind of an example, but moments in movies that we really like and, or really get across the idea of what's going on. Great moments in storytelling, movies, books, TV shows, what have you. So you want to go first? I kind of just went first.
Sure. I can go second.
Or whatever.
All right. So it goes without saying that you and I are both Star Wars fans.
Yeah.
Pretty big. One of my favorite movies of all time is Empire Strikes Back, which is episode 5 or 2 if you're an OG fan.
It was always episode 5. Shh. It was the second episode, but it was always episode 5.
But so my big thing with episode 5 is specifically its ending.
Mm-hmm.
And although it's not the first to do it, it's probably one of the most popular ones to do this kind of ending, and it encouraged a ton of crap after it.
Yeah, and it's definitely pulling an Empire, yeah.
Yeah, there's a big thing that people are doing nowadays because they think it's artsy and clever.
Sure.
And that is the negative ending, the bad ending, or in a lot of cases, like the bad ending with promise of a sequel. Like, that's how you do sequel bait, is like Empire.
It's essentially the closing of the second act of a play.
Yeah. Ending of Empire, spoilers, even though you should have already seen this, if not, you're an idiot. Luke realizes that the person he's
Darth Vader's his father, what?
Oh, I wasn't even going to say that. Is that who it is?
Sorry, go ahead.
I thought it was Hayden Christensen.
Oh.
Great.
He jumps. He jumpers.
Yeah, why doesn't he jump in that suit? I know why. Did you watch the Red Letter Media video where they went through and talked about Vader's suit and all like the needles that are in it? And how it beeps persistently to bother him. But yeah, so Luke finds out that, of course, he's got daddy issues. Loses a hand, that kind of sucks. Loses a lightsaber, also sucks. Leia is with Lando. That sucks.
Is that a racist thing?
No, the dude's a traitor.
He redeems himself.
Billy D. Williams is fantastic.
Colt 45.
Yeah, he's great. Lando's an amazingly awesome character. Do not put him in the Han Solo movie, though. Please.
That's going to happen.
I don't want a young... Even if it is... What is it, Donald Glover?
They should just cast Billy D.
Danny
Williams.
Glover?
No, they should just cast Billy D. Williams again.
as a young
no
Lando.
makeup, no nothing. But he uses a lot of hip jive talk.
Right. And he has to act next to I can't remember the kid's name. I'm just gonna call him that dude from Hail Caesar. He's great in that movie, by the way. If you haven't seen that.
Heelner.
Yes. No one's gonna remember that.
No, that's not. That's a reference that no one will get. No, that's fine.
But yeah, so C-3PO's in pieces. That's actually a benefit, in my opinion. R2's there. Rest in peace, Kenny Baker.
Oh, yeah, Kenny Baker died.
Yeah, it was really sad.
It sucks, man.
But the biggest thing is Han Solo was frozen and gone. And actually, the original concept for this, which was kind of one of Harrison Ford's desires, which, spoiler alert for Episode 7, Harrison Ford always wanted to be killed off as Han Solo. And this was, they did this in the end of 5 because they were uncertain on whether or not he was returning to 6. So they did this in a way that was we could kill him from here, or just get him out of the series, or he could come back with whatever Harrison Ford wants to do.
Definitely.
Because he was holding them by the balls at that point.
Right. And just to plug our own podcast, but if you haven't, go back and listen to our episode on character death, where we kind of go in depth on the death of Han Solo in Force Awakens.
Yeah.
And why it doesn't work in that movie.
Right. If it worked, it would have worked in this.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it had that amazing line that was improv leading up to it.
I was listening to the Crack podcast. We're just going to keep going off topic. I was listening to the Crack podcast earlier today, and they were talking about changes that would have made movies better, small changes that would have made good movies better or bad movies better or whatever. Okay. And one of them was Steven Spielberg was originally supposed to direct Return of the Jedi. And the biggest reason that he couldn't do it, because he was part of the Screen Directors Guild, and apparently the guild didn't like the idea. Screen actors, directors, whatever the name of it is, they didn't like the idea that
Film Actors Guild.
The Film Actors Guild. That Lucas didn't put the credits in the opening, because obviously we have the Star Wars crawl, the obvious, the classic. And after the success of A New Hope and the success of Empire, they were like, no, you need to put the names at the beginning in the credits, because that's the rules of the guild. And so Spielberg couldn't direct it because he was a member of the guild. Crawl. Yeah, exactly.
Just lightning round it.
I mean, but it's crazy and they were even mentioning this on the podcast. It was Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back, these movies that made just millions of dollars and were just revolutionary. And the Screen Actor Directors Guild was like, no, you gotta change that. And that's why we didn't get a Steven Spielberg directed Return of the Jedi. I still like it. It's clearly the weakest of the three, but it's not a bad movie by any means.
But so 5 revolutionized endings in a lot of ways at that point. And specifically, I kind of want to just talk about the one shot, and that is when Luke gets his arm, he gets a new arm.
Yeah.
And it's him, Leia, and those 2 robots, those idiot robots that don't do anything. Standing in front of that giant glass window on it's just a space station.
Yeah, and you can see the Nova in the background.
Right, and it's just that shot is wonderful because that shot just completely embodies this idea that it's us against the galaxy at this point. All hope is lost. Vader did not lose anything in that fight. The Empire is rebuilding the Death Star, which I don't know if they know about that yet.
No, that's not shown until Jedi.
But they know that the Empire is healing.
Yeah, stronger than ever, yeah.
Well, yeah, because they kick back, right, immediately with Hoth.
Yeah, Luke's been defeated, and, Han Solo's captured. The chips are down, yeah.
Right, Boba Fett still sucks, because he's a piece of shit character, but whatever.
Well, at this point, he's still cool, because he's still mysterious.
Right, he's dead or alive.
Well, the original voice is way better than the redub voice in special editions.
You didn't like the weird Australian voice?
No, the original voice is so much cooler. I can't even imitate it because I'm going to try, but I'm going to fail. He's like, what if he doesn't survive? He was worth a lot to me, or whatever. I can't even imitate it, but it was this cool, cold,
drunk.
almost metallic voice.
Yeah,
it was so badass, and now it's fucking been lost to the special editions.
He's that jackass from Episode 2 now, I think, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. It is.
Ugh.
Right. But yeah, that's
my favorite kid.
No, that is you're right. Like that is a great like in most of the Star Wars movies end in kind of the same way where it's all orchestral for like the last couple minutes and like
they all end with ceremonies.
Yes.
New Hope ends with the weird amulet ceremony.
The giving of the medals.
The Ewoks brutally murder people and cut their heads off in the 6th one.
Those are just helmets. Those aren't heads.
How do you know there's not heads under there? You know.
Well, this is a universe where because when Jango Fett had his head cut off, where heads just don't come out of helmets apparently.
No, they're stuck in there.
Unless you're Luke Skywalker or Han Solo.
Right.
When they disguise themselves.
Then you have Episode 1. They have that giant fake ass Naboo ceremony, which looks like shit. Episode 2.
Wedding.
Who cares? Episode 3, they show everyone celebrating, which is fake as crap and no one cares.
I don't even remember the end of Episode 3.
I don't think anyone does celebrate.
Doesn't matter.
There's just a bunch of dead kids in Episode 3.
No!
That does happen. Oh, the celebration is them on the Star Destroyer. They look out,
right,
there's that weird skeletal system of the
Death Star and the CG fake Grand Moff Tarkin.
Right.
Yes.
It's all great. But yeah, so that movie, that scene, that ending, that shot.
That final shot, yeah.
Is just, I think that's the lowest point, besides the prequels, of the Star Wars universe. And
story-wise, the lowest point, right. Yeah.
And it just truly, it earns it. It emphasizes, the weight of the events of the next movie, as well as it really helps emphasize the weight of the events in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a really cool way to just not end on a high note.
Yeah, and we've both talked about this before on the podcast, where I feel like a lot of modern movies, Guardians of the Galaxy, I think is a really great example of this, where I like Guardians of the Galaxy. It was a fun movie.
Yep.
But at no point in that movie do I feel like any of the characters are in any sort of danger. I just don't feel like there's nothing at risk. There's no stakes ultimately. Right. For that movie. Just again, I feel that way while I'm watching it. It's a fun movie. I enjoyed watching it, but it feels like there's nothing at risk. Whereas in Empire, and Empire is such a fantastic movie, but one of the things that it did really, really well is the stakes are real. The good guys lose.
That's the biggest thing.
Luke gets his hand cut off, Han's captured, the good guys.
This is a failed ending.
Yeah, they don't win in the end.
Lando's a character now.
Yeah, Lando is a character now. And it's this, like you said, this real low point. It's the end of that second act. It's the dark chapter before the darkness before the dawn, if you will.
Right.
And it's fantastic. Like we said earlier, unfortunately, it's kind of led to so many movies
trying to end with that melodramatic final, and it's just a lot of movies. It kind of works, but more times than not, it
feels cheap a lot of the time.
It feels like they're pulling an Empire.
Yeah, it really, really does. It's almost like it's kind of an excuse now not to have to end your story.
Right.
Because I would argue that Empire tells a complete story.
Yeah, you can watch Empire without watching Return.
Yeah, absolutely. It tells a complete story. The story is going to continue forward, but all of our characters have completed an arc by the end of Empire. It's not like things are just left kind of hanging. There's clearly, it's a cliffhanger for the continuation of the story, but it's also told a complete story in its own right.
Right. Which is a different ending.
Yeah, absolutely. Another great moment in Empire, we've kind of talked about this before again, but when Luke is lifting the X-Wing out of the swamp, and then Yoda's, there's that great line where Luke is like, I can't believe it. I can't believe you did that. And Yoda's like, right, and that's why you failed.
Right.
And it's just this great, it really sells home the idea that the Force is this mystical energy, and a creature as small as Yoda can master the Force and do all these great things.
It does not mean he has to jump around.
Right. They obviously throw all that away in the prequel trilogy, but it's that
fight you I will.
Lawrence Kasdan's directing and the writing and Frank Oz's puppetry and Mark Hamill's acting and all of these things come together in that scene to really sell home the idea of what the Force is and how amazingly powerful it can be. Unfortunately, yes, that's all dismantled later on in the prequels.
During Christopher Lee and Yoda's fight.
Yeah, but that moment, that scene is so incredibly powerful.
5 is where I think they really nailed
character
development.
Yeah, Empire is clearly the best Star Wars movie without a doubt.
Off with I would argue the most iconic moment in all the films, which is It might be that or the trench run.
Yeah.
The Hoth fight.
I would say I mean, it's one great movie versus another great movie. But yeah, the trench run and the Hoth, like both, again, very, very iconic scenes and obviously hugely influential in pop culture.
Yeah.
Even still to this day.
Yeah, especially
so much so that they just keep remaking it.
Civil War just did it. Civil War just made and they kind of made me cringe when Spider-Man's like, you know that really old movie? And it's like, if Tom Holland was a nerdy kid, he would know Star Wars.
I feel like, but maybe that's just us being old, man.
We're not that old.
I'm almost 30, man. That's crazy.
I'm still 20.
Forever 20.
Forever 21. Please pay for sponsorship.
Are they still a thing?
I hope so. Maybe they can pay us for this name drop.
I don't think there's one in the mall anymore. I have no idea. Who cares? Anyway. But yeah, that's a great example. Empire is kind of full of those moments, but I think the ending and the scene in the swamp is very, very iconic for sure. So the next moment that I want to talk about is from a book that we've talked about before, 1984.
And a movie.
My favorite book, and it's been a movie a couple times.
Yep.
And again, spoilers for this book hopefully you've listened to the previous episode or you've read the book or whatever. But
I don't think it's a high school book anymore, is it?
It was a high school book when I was in high school. I don't know if it still is.
It wasn't when I was.
Might be deemed too controversial now.
Right. Well, they stopped reading To Kill a Mockingbird because it used the N-word.
Yay.
Yay. Education is hard.
Anyway, again, spoilers. So at the end of 1984, the main character, Winston Smith, he is taken to room 101, which is basically a
Vault 101?
Yeah, a prison where he's being held and tortured because he was trying to essentially join a resistance group called the Brotherhood, which works against the party.
It's really hard not making Fallout references here. I'll try my best.
Very good, very good. So the party is obviously the ruling class that is like the kind of totalitarian Orwellian, that's where this comes from, organization that controls the government and controls all of society, and they're pulling the puppet strings on everything.
Right.
And Winston believes that he's joining a group called the Brotherhood that's going to fight against the party. His main contact in the Brotherhood is this guy named O'Brien. And of course, at the end of the story, it turns out O'Brien is a member of the Inner Party.
Yeah, he's a rat.
And he betrays Winston. And there's this dialogue between Winston and O'Brien at this point in the story. And at this point in the story, Winston has been held inside of the Ministry of Love, which is ironically named because that's where they torture everyone for information and all that good stuff. So Winston's being tortured, and he's been there for an unspecified amount of time, like
5 minutes.
Winston is our perspective character in this, and he has been through so much that he does not know how long he's been inside the ministry, inside room 101. And there's this dialogue between Winston and O'Brien where O'Brien basically explains, look, who knows if there is a brotherhood? Who knows if there is a resistance? That doesn't matter. The idea is that the party always needs an enemy in order to show that they are constantly achieving victory.
Right.
In order to show that they are constantly overcoming the foe. Even if there is no foe, there has to be a foe just so the people can see that the party is always winning.
Yeah.
And that's a really big theme in the book. You ultimately don't know if there is a resistance group against the party or not. There's a great line in the book where O'Brien basically says, imagine a world where the image that you should have in your head is a boot stamping on the human face forever, so that there is absolutely no hope for humanity from escaping the reign of the party, because the party will always be there, because the people will believe that the party is what's protecting them from this foe, whether that foe actually exists or not.
Right.
And Winston tries to argue with him. Winston basically counters, look, the world that you describe will never happen, and it can't ever happen. And O'Brien says, well, why not? And Winston's like, it's just people won't allow that to happen. Like, people are good, people are decent. You cannot run society on fear and on hate. And O'Brien's like, you assume that it's much easier to love than it is to hate. And even if that were true, who cares? Like, we're pulling all of the strings. Like, there's nothing that you can do about this. We've been doing it for years. The only thing that you have left to do is not only join and accept what the party is all about,
Right.
but to become one of us.
Yeah, to just fold into the mold.
To fold into the mold, exactly. And Winston counters with, no, something will always prevail. And O'Brien says, what do you mean? And it's like, the spirit of man, like the spirit of man will prevail against what you're doing. And O'Brien says, well, okay, do you consider yourself this spirit of man? Are you the man in this scenario? Winston's like, yes. So you believe that you are morally superior to the party? Yes, absolutely. And then O'Brien plays a recording of a conversation that Winston and O'Brien had much earlier in the novel,
right,
when O'Brien originally recruits Winston into the Brotherhood, quote unquote, as all deception. And during this conversation, O'Brien had asked Winston and Julia, the other character in the novel, what would you be willing to do to fight against the party? What would you be willing to do in service of the Brotherhood? And Winston's like, I'd do anything. Like, it doesn't matter. And so O'Brien asked him, like, would you support, encouraging prostitution and encouraging drug use? And I'm like, yes, absolutely. And he's asking him all these horrible things. And one of the last things he asks is, would you be willing, if we told you to do so, to throw acid in a child's face?
Of course, why not?
And Winston's like, absolutely, I would do that.
Sounds fun.
And he plays this recording, and Winston is like, shit, I'm not morally superior because I've said that I will do terrible things in order to achieve
the
goals of an organization.
Yeah, you're supporting this other group the same way that you would be supporting this one.
Exactly. And so there's no difference. And then O'Brien has Winston stand up and walk towards a mirror, and when Winston gets there, he sees that he's a broken man. Like, he's missing his teeth, he's incredibly skeletally thin, all of his hair is falling out in clumps. His skin is just caked with dirt. I mean, the description that Orwell gives in this paragraph of what Winston sees when he looks in the mirror, it's disturbing. Like, it's crazy how just terrible Winston has it. And he hasn't seen himself this entire time. And it's hard for him to believe that the person that he is seeing in the mirror is himself.
Right.
And it's just this absolutely crushing moment where, again, the good guys lose. And not only do they lose, but they lose bad. They lose horribly. And the whole theme of this novel, because again, it ends on a down note where Winston ultimately does relinquish control of his mind to the party, and he accepts the party, and he loves the party as he thinks to himself. And that's the theme of this book, is that this organization has taken control over the government, over organized society, over the emotions that people feel, and the party will prevail, and they will crush all opposition. And this short little scene really encapsulates that whole idea and that whole theme into this simple act of having Winston admit to himself, I am just as terrible as the party. Like, I was willing to do terrible things in order to achieve means, and look where it's gotten me. And O'Brien finishes the conversation with, you knew that going against the party would lead to terrible things. The situation that you were in, it all started with that first decision, and you knew 100% what would happen to you. This is your fault. It's not the party's fault. You knew the consequences of your actions.
Right.
And he agrees. And it's just, it's crushing. It's so bad. But it's great.
Or is it?
Read books, kids. They're great.
Don't read books. They're terrible.
Some of them are great.
Wait till the movie comes out, because I do that now.
I would love, we've talked about this before, but I would love
a modern
1984. Come on, Fincher.
Speaking of Fincher, so also speaking of tension to me is one of the hardest things to achieve in films. Genuinely, not that bullshit crescendo of music,
right?
As like the person reaches out to like a door and like that's not tension.
Yeah, fake jump scares.
That doesn't count.
Right.
Tension is when everything is in view, and like the tension I'm talking about specifically is when everything is in view, but you're just uncomfortable.
Right. That feeling of dread.
Right.
Almost.
Like that you just want to get out of this. Like you want to turn it off. You want to look away. You want the person in the film to get out of there.
Right. That genuine uncomfortableness that comes with dread and the tension you're describing.
So we'll take you back to the 1960s. In the 1960s, there was a famous murderer going around California who was called the Zodiac Killer. He was a person that killed people who we didn't know. He killed complete strangers, and he would call the police and tell them, and he would also send these like riddles to the newspapers, the FBI, and the police.
Yeah, these cipher encryption.
Right, with like his Ovaltine rings and everything.
Yeah.
So David Fincher made a movie about this. He made kind of like this biopic about it with Jake Gyllenhaal, Mark Ruffalo, and just a lot of like great stuff.
Iron Man.
No, he's not in the movie. And with it's pre-Iron Man, isn't it?
It's pre-Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like one of his first comeback roles. Which
yeah,
is
it
nice.
was like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and Zodiac right before Iron Man.
Right, and I think he's really good in this.
He's really good, yeah.
So the movie follows Jake Gyllenhaal, who is just this comic writer for the newspaper, but he's really into puzzles and he's solving these things really, really well, while Mark Ruffalo is the officer that's trying to track down the Zodiac Killer. But there's one scene in particular I'm talking about, and this is about 2/3 of the movie, so spoiler alert with this one. Jake Gyllenhaal feels like he has this really good lead on who the Zodiac Killer is. And it all comes down to this small theater where they constantly showed the film Best Game or the World's Best Game or something like that. The World's Greatest Game. I don't remember what it is.
Yeah.
But it's a story about a guy who kidnaps humans and then releases them and then hunts them. And the Zodiac Killer constantly referenced it.
The Most Dangerous Game?
I think that's what it is. Most Dangerous Game is humans. Yeah. So that's what it is. And he did that in real life. You can actually find the notes that he wrote where he references this film.
Yes.
So Jake Gyllenhaal's character starts piecing things together, and he finds this old movie theater that showed this movie constantly. And he finds that there's movie posters with like this writing on it. And the writing has a very good match with the letters written by the Zodiac Killer. So Jake Gyllenhaal decides, I'm going to go find the theater owner, and I'm going to go sit down and talk with him. So, dark night, pouring rain, like small little farmhouse in secluded California somewhere. Jake Gyllenhaal pulls up and he walks in and like the guy's like, "Oh yeah, come in." And the guy's really nice and sweet and he offers him, coffee, and Jake Gyllenhaal like pulls out a poster and he's like, "Yeah, I just want to talk to you about this, I feel like one of your guys, wrote these posters and blah, 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 and I think he might be tied to this incident and yada, yada, yada." And the guy just like looks at me and goes, "Oh, well, I wrote all the posters." And as soon as he says that, like, your heart just drops. Like, when I first watched this, like, it's just like, oh, shit. Well, and the scene keeps getting worse and worse. And this is where David Fincher really, shines with his tension building. Is, like, Jake Gyllenhaal, the same time that we do, is just like, fuck, I gotta get out of here now.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, "Oh, well, no, thank you. That's all I need." And he's, like, rolling out the poster really quickly. And the guy's like, no, come downstairs. I wanted to show you something. And there's a moment earlier in the film where the guy mentions a basement. And Jake Gyllenhaal's like, "Wow, a lot of houses in California don't have basements." So the guy says, "Well, let me take you down to my basement." So he makes another connection to the Zodiac Killer.
Yes.
And as they're walking to the basement, Jake Gyllenhaal clearly hears, like, creaking boards upstairs. And he kind of just looks up. He goes downstairs with the guy. And the guy's, like, turning on, like, he's trying to find this old film canister that was supposedly made by the Zodiac Killer. And again, he starts hearing things around him, including he sees the dust from the roof in the basement kind of moves as if someone's walking around the house. And just immediately Jake Gyllenhaal just goes, are you sure we're alone? And like the guy just smiles, and it's just like this, it's a super nervous thing. And like the guy's like, "Can I get you anything else to take?" And like he just like bolts.
Yeah, he's just gone.
He just gets the hell out. And again, it does have a jump scare in it too. It's not that bad of a jump scare, but he's at the door and he's like frantically trying to get it, and the guy just like shows up behind him and like unlocks it and like lets him run out.
Yes.
But that scene is so well done.
Yes.
Because like the whole movie has set up who this guy is, and it even has, I guess you could say, a red herring on this other person, and then this is supposed to be like the real one, even though this is even more of a red herring.
Spoilers, the murder's never solved.
Right, well, the murder never was solved, period, even in real life.
The case was never solved, yeah. They never caught the guy.
Even though the guy who they very much suspect was him, and I think they were almost like 90-something% certain it was him, died of a heart attack back in like 99 or something like that.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot of speculation.
It's just so good, and there's just some beats in that scene where it just gets worse, and then it gets worse, and you're sitting there wondering, like, how much worse is this going to get? And the whole time you're thinking, well, this guy's dead.
Right.
Zodiac Killer's upstairs, Jake Gyllenhaal's dead. Like, this is it. This is game over, man. This is like pick your own adventure, Goosebumps style. You didn't listen to your mom, and now you're stabbed to death. Like, that's how this ends. It's so good. And we could just gush about David Fincher so much over this one movie, but man, this scene is just, this is how you build tension.
Yeah, it is fantastic. That whole movie is great. But yeah, that scene in particular is just, I mean, you are on the edge of your seat the entire time. And it just slowly builds on top of itself. And yeah, like you were saying, those little details of like, oh, there's not a lot of basements in California, or oh yeah, I wrote the movie posters myself. Like, just little details keep trickling in. And Fincher, God, he's such a master. Like, he's built the movie and carried you through the screenplay and the story in a way that you know what those details are. So when they start to unfurl in this scene, it's just adding the tension and adding the tension. It's perfect.
Yeah, and Jake Gyllenhaal's character is putting it together as you are.
Yeah, as you, the audience, are. And so it's just, yes, it's building and building, and everything's going along, and you, the audience, and the character in the movie are discovering things at the same time, which adds to the tension and adds to the heightened emotion. And it's just, it's masterful.
Yeah. Ugh.
So the next scene I want to talk about is actually from a David Ayer movie, the same guy who directed Suicide Squad.
Yay!
And I kind of wanted to talk about this last week, but we ran out of time. But this scene is really important to me in this movie. It's the movie Fury, which stars Brad Pitt, and it's about this tank unit during World War II. And it's a good movie. If you haven't seen it, I'd recommend watching it, specifically for the scene that I'm about to tell you about. So again, slight spoilers. And you and I actually just watched this scene a few minutes ago, because you hadn't seen this movie, but I've talked about this scene a million times.
I made fun of this movie for a very long time because this was one of the movies that Shia LaBeouf took the spotlight with, how he apparently truly scarred his face for this movie or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
He did something weird.
Running for your life from Shia LaBeouf. He's brandishing a knife. It's Shia LaBeouf. Lurking in the shadows. Hollywood superstar Shia LaBeouf.
So the plot of the movie is it's Brad Pitt, and he's the leader of this tank unit that also includes Shia LaBeouf, Michael Pena, the guy who plays Shane, John Barenthal,
Punisher.
Yeah, as well as the Punisher, and then Logan Lerman. Logan Lerman is like a new recruit to this unit. He was like a journalist. He's just kind of this young kid, and he gets kind of thrown into the middle of World War II with this tank unit led by Brad Pitt. And the first 45 minutes of the movie really establishes the fact that Brad Pitt is no nonsense. I mean, he's an asshole to Logan Lerman, but it's obviously because he needs to toughen him up. Like, this is war. They're in the middle of Germany. Like, they're fighting Nazis in these battles with tanks and guns and all this stuff. Like, this is war. So the scene that I want to talk about comes about 50 minutes into the movie, where the tank unit rolls in and they kill some Nazis, and they essentially liberate this town where all these refugees are staying. And the towns, of course, it's war-torn Europe, so the towns are all destroyed, and all the buildings are falling down and that sort of thing. But Brad Pitt and Logan Lerman, they go into this apartment building, and they go upstairs where they find a young woman, probably in her maybe like mid-30s, somewhere in that neighborhood. And Brad Pitt, he speaks German, and he tells the woman, "Is there anyone else here?" She says no. He knows she's lying, so he looks around, and Brad Pitt finds another young girl, the other girl's cousin, who's probably 18, 19, somewhere in that neighborhood.
20s.
Yeah, somewhere in that neighborhood. And Brad Pitt tells Logan Lerman, lock the door. So he locks the door of the apartment, and the tone that this scene takes on is, you're thinking, Brad Pitt is going to rape these two women.
Right.
Like, that's the vibe that you're getting. Like, this guy is, he's going through this hellish time in World War II. And again, the scene really plays on the idea that something very bad is about to happen, and Brad Pitt's about to do it. The reaction on Logan Lerman's face and the two women, and it's like they're waiting for the shit to hit the fan, essentially.
They all know that it's coming.
So Brad Pitt starts taking off his equipment, tells the one woman, the older woman, to bring him some hot water. And then to the other girl, he pulls out a box from his pack, and he opens up this box, and you're like, what is this going to be? And it's 6 eggs, just raw eggs.
Yep.
And he wants the two women to cook these eggs. the idea is that he wants to have a moment where the war is just kind of fades away into the background for a minute, and he wants to sit down and he wants to have a meal at a table.
He wants a fleeting experience,
yes,
as if he's back home.
And Logan Lerman looks over and there's a piano, and he picks up some sheet music and he starts playing the piano, and the two women who were super nervous, they kind of calm down.
They let down their defenses a
yeah,
little bit.
The younger girl walks over, she starts singing in German, and everybody's kind of smiling and everybody's having a good time. Brad Pitt takes off his shirt and they all look over, and his back is just completely scarred and burned and destroyed. And Logan Lerman like stops playing the piano, he's nervous, and Brad Pitt looks over to him and says, "That's a young, clean girl. If you don't take her into the next room, I will." And so like, and the girl kind of knows, like, even though she doesn't speak English, she knows, like, she grabs Logan, like kind of takes him in the next room, and they close the door. The cousin, the older girl, walks over, and Brad Pitt stops and is like, "They're young and they're alive. Let them go. Like, let them do their thing." And then so a little bit of time goes by.
Right.
The two, Logan Lerman and the young girl, that we get the scene in the room with them, and they're kind of talking back and forth, and they're both nervous and they're both kind of awkward, but they start kissing, and then presumably they have sex. So they walk out, and a little later on, Logan Lerman is kind of like smiling, and Brad Pitt looks at him and kind of smiles like, "You don't have to say anything. You don't have to say a word." And the cousin looks over to the younger girl, and she kind of smiles too. Like, it's this nice moment. And then right before they bring out the eggs and everything's done, the other three members of the unit storm up the stairs.
You can hear them the whole way.
Kick open the door. They're loud. They're clearly drunk. You know, they're making a ruckus. And then they come up, and John Barenthal's character is like, did you sleep with her? Did you get some? Oh, good for you." And they're kind of like razzing him. And and Logan Lerman has this look on his face where he's clearly like, "Don't fucking touch her," and like he's pissed. John Barenthal's like putting his finger on the girl's lips, and Brad Pitt's like, "Leave the girl alone." And you can tell, like, the look on Brad Pitt's face is, "You're ruining my fucking moment."
Right.
And so they all come in, and like, "I guess we weren't invited to the party." And the guys, you know, they're taking the eggs, and Brad Pitt's like, "That's the girl's eggs. Give her her eggs. Serve her her plate." And then it's the tension. You know, we were talking about tension earlier. Like, the tension is clearly there, and then Michael Pena's character starts telling a story about how, you know, when after D-Day, their unit was there, and there was just bodies, dead Germans, dead Americans, dead horses. But for 3 days straight, they had to go around and they had to kill horses because they didn't have anything to feed the horses, and they couldn't have them running around and messing everything up. So for days, they went around and they shot these horses. And Michael Pena goes into detail about how you had to stroke its nose, and then you had to shoot it through the spine. And like, it's horribly graphic and morbid. And he's looks at Logan Lerman. He's like, "You weren't there. We were there. You weren't there." Like, the subtext is, what gives you the right to come up here and have this moment with our captain, with our leader, and enjoy yourself with these attractive women, and you're not going to invite us? Like, you weren't there. You haven't been through what we've been through. And Brad Pitt like has this line, and he says to Shia LaBeouf, John Barenthal, and Michael Pena, and he's like, "As much as you want to, you will not ruin this meal for me. I will enjoy this meal no matter how much you don't want me to, no matter how much you try to destroy it." And John Barenthal kind of is like, "What gives him the right, man? You weren't there. You weren't there." And Brad Pitt like slams his fist into the table. He's just like, "Enough. We're done here." And then another soldier comes up and is like, "Hey, we need you out here." And the scene just like, the tension dissipates and they leave. But the scene, and it's maybe 12 minutes long in total. And I've told you about this scene many, many times. I really wanted you to see it before we recorded this. And I was just like, it's so good. It's so powerful, because Brad Pitt has almost no dialogue throughout this scene. He has maybe like 5 lines.
Yeah.
But it's all the acting in his face, you know, and he takes the hot water, and, you know, he shaves and cleans himself up for the first time in a long time. Like, he wanted this moment where he could come in, he could shave, he could be clean, he could sit down, he could have this nice meal, he could enjoy the company of these two women. Like, he could see Logan Lerman have a little bit of happiness with this young woman who's also young and like playing the piano and she's singing, and he's carving out this moment in this hellish war where he can enjoy himself for just a few minutes, and it's ruined.
What it's like.
Yeah, and it's ruined by the men that are in his unit, by his own men. And as much as it pisses him off, he knows that these men are responsible for keeping him alive in this war.
And vice versa.
And vice versa. These are not necessarily his best friends in the world. These are not necessarily the men that he would choose to sit down and have a meal with.
But it's what he's got.
But it's what he's got. It's so good. It's such a good scene. I really, really love it, clearly. And the movie's good. Like, the movie's definitely worth watching, but that one scene is worth the price of admission. Like, it's so good. Brad Pitt does such a great job. And again, this scene was directed by David Ayer. You know, he did Training Day. He did Fury. He directed this scene. And so when we talked about Suicide Squad last week, it was really kind of a letdown because we know what this guy is capable of. Like, we know what this guy can bring to the table.
A lot more than Suicide Squad.
Right. And again, I'm sure the studio, hacked up the movie, and there's stories about how it was re-edited by a trailer company.
It's just stupid.
Yeah, and there's a lot going on here. And I'm sure it wouldn't have been the best movie ever, originally, because it was mediocre and it was generic. But it's just a shame because we were talking earlier about how there are certain directors that have creative control, that can kind of just do whatever they want. And I'm not saying that that's the direction that Suicide Squad should have gone in, but a scene like this in the movie Fury just is great evidence that David Ayer really knows what he's doing when it comes to a little slower, a little somber, these character moments, these moments of character building where you really get to see who these people are, both through dialogue and just through the visuals and the acting.
Yeah.
And none of that is on display in Suicide Squad.
I guess the closest you get is that bar scene.
Right, but even that is just like tacked on and garbage, and it doesn't.
It's all about El Diablo.
Yeah, and it just doesn't fit the theme of the movie, and the plot just comes to a grinding halt, so they can have this like really, really awkward scene.
Yeah,
it's just really bad, and this is what we're talking about when we talk about movie fans and storytelling fans. You deserve a better film. You deserve a better story to be told. Like, you deserve these moments of transcendence and these moments of true connection to characters, especially when you have characters like Harley Quinn or like Batman or like Superman, where there's years and years of history and of source material that you can pull from. There's so many things that make these characters truly compelling, and it's why people love these characters so much.
Right.
And when you don't put any of that into your film, when you don't adapt any of that into your story, it is a letdown. It really is a disappointment.
Yeah, that's the DC universe right now, is all letdowns.
So, sorry to get a little serious on us right there. But anyway, if you haven't seen Fury, watch it. Again, just for that scene alone, it's worth the time.
Right. So, I mentioned a long time ago that I was a really big fan of Pokemon growing up, right? And one of the funniest things that is always associated with Pokemon are the weird lessons you learn from that. And I'm not talking about like the episode-to-episode lesson where it's like, be true to yourself. Don't judge a book by its cover.
Brush your teeth.
Brush your teeth.
And the moral of today's story is, brush your teeth after every meal. This moral brought to you by the American Dental Association.
Don't trust me out. He's a piece of shit.
But how do I know you're not going to pull a fast one on me?
Like, all these great lessons you learn. A lot of people like the quote from the first movie, which is the quote from Mewtwo, where it's like, circumstances of one's birth do not determine its character. It's what they do that defines oneself.
Mm-hmm.
Amazingly beautiful line.
It's a great line.
From a Pokemon. What the hell? But it taught this really good lesson. So the first episode of Pokemon is like a wonderful setup. We see Ash watches the TV, and he sees the Pokemon League Championship going on. And he watches this big epic fight that actually really cleverly recreates the opening for the Red and Blue games, which is really cool to think about. And he watches it, and he's like, I can't wait to do that. I want to do that. And he has a dream about how, which one should I choose so that I can go and, be this champion. And then he gets Pikachu, and he gets all his other friends, and he meets up with Ash. He meets up with himself. he gets all his friends, and he meets up with Misty and Brock, and then he goes through and he defeats all the 8 gym leaders, and he gets the 8 qualifying badges, not 10, Gary Oak, 8, to qualify to get into the Pokemon League, which I think it's called the Pokemon League in this. It's called the Elite Four in the games, but
sure,
whatever.
Sponsored by Mountain Dew.
If only. Yeah, that'd be great. The new, like, the real Pokemon would have, like, Red Bull all over the sides. It'd be like, here we are in the nice PepsiCo Arena.
That's going to be the reboot in 10 years.
Yeah. The PepsiCo Arena, brought to you by Petco and Pepsi. So...
where the Pokemon go.
Right. But it's great. So the whole series builds up to this one giant tournament. He's trained. He's, some of his guys have evolved, some of them haven't. Like, they've all built up and trained for this one moment. And he knocks out his first couple of people. I think he knocks out 3 or 4, and then he meets his next opponent, which is this kid named Ricky, who's kind of come from the same world that he has, right? And the biggest thing about this is that he loses. And he loses pretty close.
Rocky style.
Right, yeah, it gets right to the end, and because his Charizard's a dick, he loses. And this crushes him. Like, you gotta remember, this is like 100 and something episodes building up to this. He walked across the world to do this. He's met all these people. He beat 8 gyms in these huge fights, He beat his rival. Here he is. And he loses. And it's devastating for him. He even, locks himself in his room for, a couple episodes, and he, mopes about it. And it's just, it's super depressing, especially as a kid watching it. You're like, well, shit, Ash lost. It's hard to say. But then, he comes out, and he's happy for Ricky, and he's like, hey, good job, great job. Well, and then Ricky loses, which is just another kind of thing. But it's this great moment that just teaches you, and, it's even really well done in the storytelling besides the moral, it teaches you it's all right to lose. You can put in a ton of work and still not get the ending that you hoped for.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay. That's fine. Because it's the journey.
It's all about the journey, not the destination.
Right. Remember all the great times you had with, Misty and Brock and Pikachu and all the people you met. And remember that you defeated 8 gym leaders. That's not something everyone does. And you made it within the top 16. And that's amazing. Great job. And it's just this wonderful moment where, he gets really bummed out, which is expected. But then he comes back out and, he walks in the top 16 group. And he's, waving at everyone. And, he just smiles. And it's that's an amazing lesson to teach people. And it's a really good way to wrap up the first season. Granted, now there's 15 of them. And there's over 700 and something. There's new games coming out. But just that one moment will always resonate with me as, Ash Ketchum taught me that it's totally fine to lose. And that losing does not mean you're a loser. Losing is sometimes it happens, and you learn from it, and you go back and you try again when you can. Amazingly great lesson from a pretty inconsistently kind of terrible show.
I really like that. That's your new quote. Losing does not mean you're a loser.
I love it.
Eric, 2016.
Yeah. But yeah, it's another shocking part that comes from a terribly quick made to sell toys Japanese anime. And it comes out and it's got this wonderful story.
Good old Pokemon.
Yep.
Giving us some life lessons.
From a talking mouse.
From a talking mouse and a talking cat experiment thing.
And a frog with a flower on his back.
That was Brock, right? The flower growing out of his back?
Yeah. The creepy guy that awkwardly hits on every single woman.
Yes. All of them.
Nope.
Except Misty. He never really hits on Misty.
Oh, she's too tomboy, I guess.
I guess.
He's got a problem with that.
But he hits on the Jenny, the police officer lady.
Right. And he knows them differently. He's like, this officer Jenny's got... her hair is cyan. This one's aqua.
And he always talked like this.
Yeah, he's like, stop an actor from Frog.
Smoke 3 packs a day. It was all off screen.
He's a sleaze bag. There's always a pillar of smoke around. He's like, hey, Ash, caught a good smoke Pokemon?
So that's a few more examples of great moments in storytelling. So hopefully you enjoyed our episode on when the good guys lose, because it's pretty much what it turned into.
I just realized that.
So thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please let us know. You can find the show on social media at POP RANT RADIO on Facebook and Twitter. You can also email the show at poprantradio@gmail.com. The show is available on Libsyn, the website that hosts the show, and on iTunes. If you are listening to us on iTunes, please rate and review. It really helps out the show.
Do it.
The show is also available on YouTube, where you can find episodes as well as a few other things Eric and I have done. So check it out. And I've never said this before, but please, if you like the show, tell a friend. I think that's the thing that helps out the most, actually.
Yeah. Tell your cat.
Tell your cat. Tell Meowth, your cat.
Your local New York accent Meowth.
Buy him an iPhone so we can download the podcast and rate and review on iTunes.
Or just buy yourself a second one.
Something like that. Just sign up for a new account. It's all good.
Yep, it counts.
We'd like to thank Major for the theme songs, man.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it, as always. And other than that, that's the show for this week.
Gotta catch them all.
Gotta catch them all. Oh, one more thing. So we talked, this is totally off topic. So we talked about The Phantom a few weeks ago. I was listening to another podcast, How Did This Get Made podcast, where they talked about The Phantom. And listening to them, it's not a great movie. I still like it. I still enjoy it.
It's fine.
Yeah, we talked about how like there are definitely things that we were talking about, bad movies that could have been great. Probably a few more things needed to happen to make that be great, but they did have Billy Zane.
Yep.
And
Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Catherine
Zeta-Jones.
Yeah.
Yeah, her.
Michael Douglas's wife.
Absolutely. So that's the show for this week. We hope you enjoyed it, and thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
The nurse goes, "Here's your kid," and we get introduced to Bam Bam, who's a little douchebag.
Yes. Who's played by Hilner.
He's played by a set of twins, one of which is Marion, and then Hilner
Sigurdsson.
Oh man, we had a lot of fun talking about the adventures of Hilner after he filmed the Flintstones.
But we did just find out actually before the podcast that it's not actually Hilner who's talking. It is Elizabeth Daily, who, if you grew up in the 90s, she was like every Nickelodeon animated character.
Yeah, voices on the Rugrats.
She was in Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Yeah. She was in a ton of stuff.
Mm-hmm. But, so anyway, Hilner.